Welcome to this Geopolitical Situation Report, focusing on the rapid shift toward a multi-front Middle East conflict. We are currently witnessing a fundamental transition in regional dynamics. Today's briefing will cover four critical focus areas: the status of U.S. military assets, Iran's strategic retaliation, the resulting macroeconomic shockwaves, and the total disruption of regional airspace. As we dive in, it is clear that the traditional shadow war has ended, replaced by a direct regional confrontation. The strategic reality has changed. This conflict is no longer an isolated Israel-Iran dynamic. It is now a direct regional war involving U.S. military assets stationed across multiple Gulf states. The catalyst was an extensive U.S. and Israeli bombing campaign targeting Iranian nuclear and missile infrastructure, which Tehran has officially declared an act of war. The global implications are immediate. We are seeing logistical shockwaves in the Strait of Hormuz, threatening 20 to 30% of global oil and widespread commercial airspace blackouts. The current escalation was triggered by widespread strikes across Iran. U.S. and Israeli forces conducted bombing campaigns that extended far beyond Tehran, targeting locations such as Troon, Griona, and Sarmhan. President Trump justified these strikes as a necessary punishment for Iran's refusal to halt its nuclear program, citing escalations that trace back to 2025. By focusing on nuclear and missile production sites, the coalition intended to dismantle Iran's strategic depth, but the move triggered an immediate, formal state of war from Tehran. Iran faces a significant geographic constraint. It lacks the capability to strike the U.S. mainland directly. Therefore, its retaliatory doctrine focuses on raising the cost of war by targeting the network of U.S. military bases in neighboring Gulf nations. By threatening forward-deployed assets, including naval fleets and carrier strike groups, Iran aims to inflict heavy, localized damage, making the financial and strategic price of intervention too high for Washington to sustain. We are now seeing this retaliation in real time. Iran has launched a massive missile barrage across 4 sovereign Arab nations hosting U.S. architecture: Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and UAE. These strikes target specific command and functions, from naval command in Bahrain to air command in Qatar and logistics hubs in Kuwait. This move effectively forces these sovereign nations into the center of a high-intensity conflict. Looking closer at Bahrain, the primary target is Manama, which houses the U.S. Fifth Fleet headquarters. This base is the brain of U.S. naval operations across the Persian Gulf, Arabian Sea, and Red Sea. By striking the Fifth Fleet, Iran directly threatens the security of the Strait of Hormuz. This isn't just a military move, it's an attempt to paralyze the protection of global oil shipping routes. In Qatar, the focus is Al Udeid Air Base. As the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, it serves as the forward headquarters for U.S. Central Command, or CENTCOM. Al Udeid coordinates air operations across Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan. Iranian strikes here are a direct challenge to the overarching U.S. command and control capabilities for the entire region. To the north, strikes in Kuwait target major U.S. Army logistics centers. Kuwait is the primary staging ground for any potential U.S. ground troop deployments into Iran. By targeting these supply chains and equipment pre-positioning sites, Iran is attempting to proactively choke the logistical backbone required for a sustained ground invasion, effectively stopping any land war before it starts. In the United Arab Emirates, the war has breached civilian reality. Strikes on Al Dhafra Air Base have brought the conflict to the doorstep of Abu Dhabi and Dubai. This resulted in unprecedented emergency mobile alerts telling residents to seek shelter immediately. The psychological and economic impact here is profound, leading to a temporary shutdown of all UAE airspace. Tehran is following a strategy of calibrated escalation. They claim to target only U.S. military infrastructure, not the host nations themselves, to avoid a unified regional counterattack. However, Iran retains a wild card, its proxy network. If pushed, they can activate Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various Iraqi militias for a wider asymmetrical war that would be nearly impossible to contain. Washington is notably avoiding the Iraq model of 2003. The U.S. is reluctant to deploy hundreds of thousands of ground troops into Iran. Iranian complex geography. Instead, the current strategy focuses on air dominance and internal region change. In a televised address, President Trump encouraged Iranian civilians to overthrow the Ayatollah. Rhetoric even suggests U.S. support for restoring the pre-1979 dynasty, whose descendants reside in the U.S. The economic consequences are already being felt globally. The Strait of Hormuz is now a direct combat zone. This single corridor handles up to 30% of total global oil shipping. Any prolonged blockade will cause energy prices to spike instantly. Import-reliant economies, specifically India, China, and Europe, are facing a severe, immediate threat to their economic stability. Logistically, the region is in paralysis. Major transit hubs like Dubai and Doha are facing total commercial blackouts. Flight radar shows aircraft being rerouted into narrow, congested corridors over Oman and Saudi Arabia to maintain the vital air bridge between Asia and Europe. This disruption is adding massive costs and delays to global travel and trade. Global powers are reacting with urgency. India is walking a complex tightrope, balancing its ties with Iran against PM Modi's recent high-profile visit to Israel. China, fearing for its energy security, is exerting intense pressure for de-escalation. We expect emergency UN Security Council meetings to be called in a desperate bid to force a ceasefire before the conflict expands into a global crisis. We are now in the most critical phase. The next 48 to 72 hours will determine the trajectory of the war. The key variable is the casualty count from the recent barrages. While Iran claims it isn't targeting host nations, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait have asserted their right to respond to attacks on their soil. If these nations choose to retaliate, this will rapidly mutate into a multinational coalition war from which there may not be an easy exit.